Evening, one and all. It is 9 o'clock this time of this time. It's the 9 o'clock this side of the pond, and that only means one thing after a weekend. It's UK Cowboys time, and we're going to review the Bengals game. But as you can see, unfortunately for you, lovely lot, there's no Brian tonight, who is sunning himself and getting some culture on vast parts of Europe. So I'm going to take the lead tonight. But fortunately for you lot, we've got three guys who know what they're talking about. We've got Graham and Paul, and we've also got our good friend from DallasCowboys.com, Rob Phillips. How you all doing?
Woo! Not too bad.
Guys. Doing good. Thanks for having me on, Graham, Paul. Good to see you guys. Jamie, holding it down for Brian, huh?
Yeah, he's living it up and drinking all the Vino Rosso in Italy right now. So he is. So I'm a little bit jealous. So
we're all stuck here talking shop. Man.
Yeah, we've got a lot of good things to talk about. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. And although it's not Monday, should we class it as Victory Monday after the Cowboys get a extremely close victory on Sunday night? What were your takeaway, guys, from the game? What stood out most for you?
For me, I think the biggest improvement, it was like our offensive line had showed that continuity, and the stats speak for itself. Like I think it was like one pressure from on Tyler Smith, and there was no penalties, and that was probably the biggest thing that really stood out for everyone. There was no offensive holding, no false starts, none of that. So that, in a way, is a win in itself.
What do you reckon, Jay?
Yeah, I just remember in our private chat after the game, straight off the bat, I said the Cowboys have got a top 5 defense. Now that might have been a little bit excitable at the time, but as time goes on, I don't think that's an outrageous thing to say. I think that was a defensive win for me on Sunday. The offense put us in the position to win, but that performance by the defense in the second half to hold Burrow and their wide receiver core to as little chances as they got. I mean, Jamar Chase in particular, a quiet night for Jamar Chase. It was quite an incredible performance by the defense.
How about yourself, Rob?
Yeah, just to kind of echo what Graham said, really, Paul, too. I mean, it was a complete win. Like, if you're going to win a game without Dak Prescott, or multiple games, depending on how much time he's out, it's going to be at least this week, too, you got to have everybody pitch in. And offensive line with a lot of young guys, inexperience, did a nice job. They did what I think everybody wanted them to do, and that's establish the running game. And pretty much stick with it throughout. You know, I think they had 27 total carries, and Pollard's big catch, 40 plus yards. You could call that a run too, potentially. They really got that going. And then defensively, like Graham said, I mean, it's early in the season, but we saw signs of this going back to Oxnard and preseason, that this is a defense that is pretty nasty. It's pretty deep. And it starts with Micah Parsons, but they've got a lot of guys who can play on this group. And it's a unit that you can play to offensively. At least that's what it looks like so far, you know? And that's why it was nice to see that the game plan that they had for Cooper Rush, because don't necessarily have to do anything extra, because even against a team like Cincinnati with the quality of players they have, if you don't turn it over and you get just enough points, they might be able to, to take it home for you. And that's what they did. And Micah was incredible as usual.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm glad that you mentioned Tony Pollard's it was like 45 yard run, catch, whatever you want to call it. I don't know if you guys ever noticed this, but did you see the block for Tyler Biadasz on Eli Apple to make that play? Like, outstanding. Like that, and I'm saying this right, that is probably without a doubt Tyler Biadasz's best game in the Cowboys I've seen, hands down. I thought he was like, some of the blocks he made was absolutely fantastic, especially going down the middle, helping Zeke open up the A gap and stuff like that. So I mean, I've got a big, massive love for offensive line and defensive line, so that's my praise for pretty much for tonight. But in terms of Micah Parsons, it seems whenever he's on that defensive line front, like going down to the line of scrimmage, he just brings that big threat. But I think I mentioned this last week with Mike on the pregame show. I said I think one of the keys to win was using speed. Like use speed against that Bengals offensive line. And we saw that with the Steelers game for the Bengals, where they were struggling with like a TJ Watt, who had the most speed factor. Just get Micah Parsons lined up against them, get Dorrance Armstrong, and even get like Sam Williams up there as well. And they can just cause so much damage just by their speed alone. And we saw the end result of that.
Yeah, I said on our show on Talking Cowboys just how there was really nowhere for Joe Burrow to go. I think you saw the speed of that front seven just swarming around him. And Micah has that incredible speed, that incredible first step. But I was talking to Mickey Spagnola on the way out of the game, out of the stadium, and his combination of speed and power is what's so impressive. It is, on one sack, he's shoving Lyle Collins out of the way. And then with the second effort, gets back and makes the sack. And then on the other one against Jonah Williams, it's just pure speed, like you said, around the edge. Like He really does. He really has it all. And it's really fun to see how he's kind of refined his technique, and he's got more tools in his toolbox as a pass rusher than he did last year. It's just really, I'm writing about it today on the website. I watched back every snap. Just number one, because it's just fun to watch him play and watch where he's lined up and what he's going to do next. But yeah, he's been the catalyst for this thing so far, no doubt.
In terms of like sorry guys, I'm just taking over for a second, but see, in terms of Micah Parsons, this is more of a concern going forward and later on to the season. Do we have any concerns that we might be utilizing Micah Parsons too much to be all over the place, and it's kind of putting like the rest of the defensive line to kind of like they need to kind of match up that end. Like it's like I'm saying, like if Parsons is not on that defensive line front, it's like who's the next person to be in the pass rush essentially? Because it seems to be when Parsons is down there that then if Parsons is being blocked, that opens the doors for everybody else. We saw LVE get in there with a sack and stuff like that. I'm just kind of concerned. It's like of our defensive line, especially on the edge. It's like, do we have the guys to kind of really amplify up to step up to that same level without Parsons being there? That's my main concern. Like, I don't know what all you guys think.
I mean, to that point, Paul, I mean, they talk about a Bill Belichick defense, and the Belichick defense will always take away your biggest strength. By moving Parsons around, you're not necessarily you're going to have to account for Parsons wherever he is on the field. I mean, there was a couple of times he lined up on DeMarcus Lawrence's shoulder. So you're thinking to yourself, how are we going to deal with that? How are we going to have to consider Lawrence and Parsons off the one edge? That's really, really difficult when you consider you've got somebody like Fowler or Williams or whoever it was lining up on the opposite side. So if they can move Parsons around like a chess piece and be unsure themselves of where they're going to put him next, how is the offense meant to know?
Because that's a fair point.
When you can move all over the place, that causes issues for the offensive line.
I mean, I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining. Like Parsons is amazing. I'm just concerned. I'm more concerned we might burn him out. Like the battery has ran out on Parsons. If that makes sense, that's what I'm concerned about. We might be giving him too much to do. If that makes sense. Like
he doesn't want to come off the field. That's for sure. That's what he told us after week one because he played every snap, and then I think he played 59 out of 70 snaps, and he did. He was limping at one point in the second half and was able to finish the game. And so, gosh, you hold your breath there, but he's okay. But yeah, I mean, it's a fair question because you don't want to burn him out. But I do think he has shown he can, to Graham's point, like he can do anything you ask him to do. He can line up anywhere. And Dan Quinn was asked again about that yesterday. Like, aren't you tempted after watching what he did, to just keep him at edge rusher? And Dan kind of reiterated, like, in so many words, part of his gift is he can line up where he's not supposed to be, or where you think he's supposed to be, and based on matchups, he can be anywhere. He could be off the ball, but certainly when he gets to passing downs and third down, he's going to factor in somewhere, whether it's off that edge or if he's blitzing up the middle. And he didn't do a whole lot of that on Sunday, but obviously they can put him in that role too.
I think one of the perfect examples of that as well, Rob, was, I thought it was in the third quarter, and he was lined up on the outside, but he was literally stood, and Lyle Collins just completely didn't know he was there. And it's not for Burrow's quick release. I think Burrow would have been eating turf again, wouldn't he? For God knows how many times. I think only 6 times he was sacked this weekend.
How does that happen? How does he go unblocked? I couldn't. They both blocked down inside. Lyle too. It was like, wow.
Yeah, that was really bad execution on the Bengals O line. Like, especially if you're on a tackle, you always want to make sure the outside of you is actually contained. Like, even if you've got 2 guys on the edge, you want to still even try and tell your guard beside you, like, listen, I might have a problem here. Like, we might need to rethink about what our blocking scheme is here in terms of that. But no, they just completely left Parsons unattended. It's bizarre. So bizarre. But
not the best
No. Jamie, do you want to go through the news and updates?
Yeah, I don't think there's too much things to quickly switch on to it, Paul.
Okay, I'll run the wee video. There we go.
Yeah, I think the only couple of bits. The weirdest thing is the way Mike normally gets his news is from the guy that's literally sat in the room with us right now. So it's a bit weird. But yeah. So I think the only couple of bits that we picked up was, I think Dak Prescott's having his stitches out at some point this week. I think Mike McCarthy confirmed that after the game, didn't he? Stephen Jones was quoted as well, saying that Gallup could potentially play this week. He's hoping to get a full week of practice out of him, so that's something to look forward to. And Jason Peters as well could potentially be contention this week, which is only good for the all-line. Do you know what I mean? It played to a good level this week, and getting someone of Peters' stature in there is only going to make the line stronger.
Sorry, Jimmy, you keep cutting out a little bit there. Sorry.
Yeah, it's this Yorkshire, isn't it? But yeah, I don't know which bit it was, which bit you got me cut out there, Paul. But yeah, just a bit about Peters, that he's expected to practice in pads this week as well. So could be in line to play this weekend potentially.
Yeah, for the likes of Jason Peters, I'm very interested to see what we actually do with the O-line, because like Farniak's came in, he's done a good job. He's likely going to be the sacrificial lamb that gets dropped, pretty much. There's 2 scenarios here. Like, it depends. Like, Terrence Steele had a good game. Do we want to move Peters to the right side, or do we want to move Peters to the left side and push Tyler Smith back into guard? So these seems to be the 2 scenarios what we're doing here. But it seems to be the 2 people that we're thinking about who's going to be getting dropped. It's either Farniak or Terrence Steele, but I think more likely case is going to be Farniak. I don't know what you guys think regards to that.
I mean, Rob, what's your take on Tyler Smith moving around at such an early age? I mean, he had a pretty good game on Sunday. Do you think the team would move him back to guard and go with the original kind of thoughts on him, or do they want to just let him flourish at left tackle?
That's a great question, Graham. I was wondering that, thinking about that this week too, because and they're not going to tell us. We're going to find out when it's game time. But to me, it would make more sense once Peters is ready to go. If you're trying to get your best 5, I think Peters at left tackle makes the most sense, just because it's what he's done his whole career. He's 40. I don't know if you want to move him inside I don't think he's ever played left guard. Now, maybe you could play him on the right side, but obviously Zach Martin's your right guard. I don't think that – I'm with Paul. I don't think you'd move Terrence Steele either. I think maybe Tyler Smith at guard makes the most sense if you want to play them together. And I think that would give them the best – I mean, we talk about the running game and trying to get that going. I think having Jason Peters and Terrence or Tyler Smith on the same side, providing that punch up front, I think would be a big boon there. Big boon for the offense. But it is interesting. Do you just want, because it's Tyler Smith's future position, do you want to keep bouncing him back and forth or just kind of keep him where he's at? So it's a good problem to have. Don't forget Connor McGovern's going to get healthy too in a couple of weeks.
They didn't even get to mention Connor McGovern there because he is due to come. Do you know what the timeline for McGovern's to come back?
Well, inside of a month, they think, because not on IR. He's making progress. I'm hearing he's doing better. I think he's moving a little bit better from that high ankle sprain. I don't know if it would be this week. I think that's kind of a 2 to 4 week injury, but high ankle sprains are tricky. Sometimes you come back from them faster. That's one thing Stephen Jones referenced, and he's had this before. So maybe within a couple of weeks we see him back, and then that's a good problem to have. And if you want to move Jason Peters into the lineup, well, Connor McGovern's shown he can be a great lead blocker for you too, and help you as a backup guard and center, which they need as well.
Yeah, I mean, we had so many questions in the preseason where it's like there was the continuity issues, but when it came to the Bucks game in week 1, McGovern looked really, really good, and those 8 drives that were the only eight snaps we saw him before he picked up that injury, and fair play to Farniok coming in as well. He's done a really solid job as well, filling that position. But just also for the likes of the offensive line as well, like 0 penalties as well. It's like, do you want to kind of disrupt the ongoing progression of the continuity of how this O-line is right now with Smith on left tackle and Farniok there as well? Like, because obviously Farniok's likely going to start against the Giants this week. Is that correct? Like, he's still going to be the guard going forward till like Peters is pretty much ready essentially. So I think that kind of, at least if Farniok's putting on these better performances, it's just going to give like Joe Philbin and Kellen Moore an absolute headache to decide what to do. Do they want to disrupt the balance of what that relationship's been going right now, or do they want to just put in Jason Peters just because he's got so much experience and stuff like that, but there's that small risk of like they could be able to bringing down that communication level back down again? We don't know.
Yeah, I would go with Peters just because I've watched him for years. I just think he would add so much, and I think
absolutely,
and I think he would help Tyler Smith to play next to him. I think that would be good for his development at the same time. But I mean, you guys bring up a good point though. It's like if he is your left tackle of the future's now, and if you like the way it's going, just keep giving him these reps, and if it's not hurting you anyway. But if you're trying to get him on at the same time on the field together, Peters is a tackle. He's not a guard. He's done it a little bit, but for 20 years he's been a tackle. So that's kind of where I would lean.
And that's just a crazy statistic just on itself. Like, he's been in the NFL for 20 years as an offensive lineman. It's remarkable.
Wild. Wild. And I mean, he will be in the Hall of Fame. In the next 10 years, probably he'll be in the Hall of Fame.
Easily. I think he was undrafted as well, and he's actually from Texas, I believe.
Yeah. Arkansas college guy, Jones connection, and a Texas guy. I think he wants to finish his career here, however long he wants to play.
On Sunday night, Rob, Jim Nantz and Tony Romo talked a lot about Dak being on the sidelines. Can you give us any insight into the kind of connection you had with Cooper Rush on Sunday? Was there a bit more time in the mic before the mic cut off after the 20 seconds or whatever? Did he just let Rush go and do his thing?
As far as Dak communication?
Yeah,
I think for Dak, it's more just probably in between series, just kind of being a resource if he's seeing something out there. And yeah, I mean, with the headset, he's kind of listening in, but it is Kellen Moore's show when it comes to that. I think just kind of being there for him. And it really was kind of the same dynamic in Minnesota. Dak did the same thing in that way. And Dak will tell you, Coop's done the same thing for him over the years. So they have a really good relationship. It's kind of funny how this whole dynamic is, because Kellen Moore has played with both guys and has been in the room with both guys as a quarterback. Kellen Moore threw passes to Noah Brown in 2017. And when you think about it, Kellen's he's been a player. It's not that long ago. So
yeah,
to see these guys step up in these kind of unusual roles where Coop's got to start, Noah's the number 2 receiver, and Kellen's calling plays for him, it sure worked out in week 2. Much better than it did week 1, I'll say that.
I'm gonna bring a couple of comments and I don't know how to. In a way, I kind of agree, because I think sometimes that this question might bring it. Well, I'll bring it up. So the Big Labasi is asking, do you think it's time to admit Kellen Moore can be a somewhat of a problem with the cute plays he brings in so early? It seems to kind of disrupt what, for me, I can see where he's coming from. It kind of disrupts the flow, like, because you're establishing the run game, and the next thing there's this cute play, and it just out of nowhere, and it just doesn't materialize as much. So I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on it in terms of Kellen Moore and the play calling.
Yeah, I'll jump in first. We talked about it on Talking Cowboys today. It's a great question. I mean, in terms of, that first drive against the Bucs, those were those kind of plays you're talking about. Those kind of slow developing plays against a Bucs defense that has got a lot of speed and can get to you in a hurry. So, yeah, I think he is super creative. He's got a great mind. I do think there's times where you're kind of like, well, just hand it to him, hand it to Tony Pollard, and I think they did a better job of that in week 2, and just kind of getting back to some simple stuff. I loved what they did in the first, however much of it was scripted, what they always say, first 15 plays, just some easy, simple stuff, getting the ball out to CeeDee Lamb on the edge, getting him some touches early, getting Tony Pollard involved, getting Zeke involved, and just kind of taking what's there. It was really good. And you can mix in some stuff as well. And you saw Turpin get on the field with a jet sweep and things like that. So he's got stuff in his bag still. But yeah, I agree. I think there's this offense has enough good players where you don't necessarily have to do as much of that creative stuff all the time.
Yeah. On the play, I mean, for me, it was we're kind of touching on the offensive part of the segment, but I don't think it was any coincidence that Noah Brown had such a big game. When you talk about playing with Cooper Rush, because they'll have plenty of time on the practice squad, they'll have plenty of time running with the twos. There's only so much. There was only so much they were, in my opinion anyway, that they were going to give Cooper Rush to do, and a little trick play here and there maybe just softens up the defense a little bit more for Rush. I know he went deep to CeeDee Lamb a couple of times. But they talked about it in commentary that his relationship with Noah Brown certainly helped, and you can just see that in the stats. How much he used Brown. I don't know. Maybe we'll see a little bit more expansion for the Giants game. I mean, obviously, we're not at practice every day, but just when you run with a certain level of player, I mean, maybe you could tell us this, Rob. I mean, how much time does Cooper Rush have with a player like CeeDee Lamb in a weekly practice in general?
Well, he's taking all the first team reps now. I promise you that, because they've got to get him ready. He doesn't really get any when Dak's healthy, and so yeah, I mean, and after practice and working on that kind of stuff. And it's funny, I don't know about CD, but I know some of the younger guys. Like Dennis Houston was telling me last week that he was kind of Coop's guy in the offseason. If Coop needed somebody to throw to, he'd call up Dennis and they'd go throw. So I think he's got experience with some of the backup guys too. And that goes back to practice as well. But yeah, I mean, he's getting all the work he can handle right now to get ready for these games, just because he doesn't get that work with the ones, and he didn't get the work with the ones in preseason because all the starters basically sat in those games too.
I've just brought up the stats below, and I'm just looking, like, as we were just kind of mentioning, so Noah Brown was 91 yards for 5 receptions, which is an average of 18.2 yards per catch with 1 touchdown.
That's incredible.
That's pretty impressive.
That's incredible.
Hopefully we lost Rob there for a wee second. You still there, Rob?
I got you. You guys got me?
Yep. Oh, there we go. We were upside down for a wee second. But yes, also Cooper Rush going for 255 yards, 7.6 average per throw, 1 touchdown, 0 interceptions, 1.5 sacks. Again, that's more of just, again, like, it's a robust performance. It's not like high numbers, but it kept the offense going. Like, we were putting points on the board. The offensive line had that communications, like, just getting the ball moving. The pass protection was fantastic, I thought. I mean, there was a stat from PFF, even though sometimes PFF you don't want to use some of their stuff. Sometimes it can be a wee bit tipsy turvy sometimes. But in terms of like Tyler Smith, he was, I think it was like, what was the stat again? Yeah, out of 39 snaps, he only allowed 1 pressure. That's pretty impressive as well under those, and that's only in pass protection of those snaps. So fair play, absolute fair play.
He's been good. He's been really good, and there's stuff kind of technique wise, you look at and you can say maybe he's got to clean this up, he's got to clean that up, but he's powerful. He moves well for his size. If he gets his hands on you, it's over. It's kind of like when Tyron Smith was a young player and he first came in the league, and he's just got those heavy hands, and he's just a super aggressive player who's got great athletic natural ability. And you see why he was a first-round pick, and you see why if he had stayed in college, and there might have been some top 10 programs interested in him transferring from Tulsa, and he could have been, who knows how high he could have been drafted next year.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if there's one other, I can't remember what play it was, but there was one play where you actually see Tyler Smith like helping out with the double team with Farniak and moving upfield to the second level and taking out the linebackers. And just his positioning and his sheer aggression, just driving this linebacker 4 or 5 yards, just nearly putting him on his backside. I thought, this is exactly what we needed, that fresh bit of blood in that O-line, just to kind of give that little bit of animosity, so to speak. Because I think the criticism for the past couple of years, we have been quite soft in terms of the O-line. We've actually kind of, this game in particular, we showed that aggression, even from Zach Martin in the 1 yard line, where how he opened up that gap for Tony Pollard to run it for the touchdown. Like, he just dipped his shoulder in and took out DJ Reader like it was nothing. It was beautiful to watch.
It is, and it's kind of why I want to see him at guard, honestly, because I know he's going to be the tackle of the future, and he is now, at least until Tyron comes back. But that's a problem they had inside, was handling some of those bull rushes inside with some powerful defensive linemen. Think about Chris Jones with the Chiefs last year. Think about facing Philly here in a few weeks with Jordan Davis. I'd love to see that matchup inside. If he were to move inside, maybe Jason Peters plays left tackle. So, but he's got agility too. There was a play, I think it was in the fourth quarter, Tony Pollard got loose for a 17-yard gain, and it was Tyler and Farniak pulling to the outside across the formation, and talented young guy.
I'm going to bring this comment up because it kind of relates to yourself, Rob, as our very own Mike Poland. And he told me not to put, I don't know why he commented, because I was going to put it up anyway. Not to remind you that he owes you $10 for last year's failed bet. So he owes you $10.
I don't even remember what the bet was. Can you remind me? I appreciate it.
One of the offensive linemen to score a touchdown, wasn't it? I think he had a hope. I can't remember which one it was, but I think he had a bet.
I think that was the bet. It was something to do with an O-line scoring a touchdown or something like that.
Touchdown. It's like, hey, I got to buy diapers, so if he wants to give me $10, I got, I need all the money I can get.
Just send us your paper. Just send us the PayPal details. We'll make sure we'll get that over to Mike, and he'll square you up, man.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate that.
But yes, it's I don't know what like. I did kind of feel as though there was a wee stumbling block in the second half, though, and this is more. I would say this is more credit towards the Bengals, the Bengals, just in general, from the defensive side and offensive side. they changed it up. They kind of stopped us. We didn't even score any points in the third quarter, and the only points we did score in that second half was the winning field goal from Money Brett Maher. So, so in fair play, like the Bengals kept the game alive. They changed things up. They readjusted. They addressed the issues on both sides of the ball, and I mean, even from the defensive side of the ball, they kept our defense on for was it 8 minutes on the drive or something like that to really run the clock down, which was a really smart tactic when you really think about it. Like just wear our defense out, and the next time they go back in, they'll be obviously still tired from the previous goal. But yeah.
Did it not feel like though that probably halftime just came at the wrong time for the Cowboys? They had the crowd on side. Everything seemed to be flowing nicely, and then all of a sudden halftime come, the Bengals could get the breath, kind of readjust and get a couple bits sorted here, there, and everywhere, and it just kind of fell a little bit. It felt like it fell by the wayside a little bit. The Cowboys just lost that mojo that they had in the second quarter, and there were a few throws from Cooper Rush that just seemed a little bit rushed and a little bit kind of not thought of well. And you say it kind of spiraled in a little bit, and then the crowd got back into it and kind of just, like I say, spread the defense on then and managed to get a stop and keep it going. And then we managed to get it downfield just enough for my high. I think that kick, to be fair, would have probably gone another 5-10 yards, wouldn't it? It looked like it had a good length on it. So I don't know what you guys think, if it just kind of come along at the wrong time.
Yeah, and guys, I got to jump off here in a minute, but yeah, it's one of those things where it's like you got the lead, and it's kind of a tough place to be because you're up, and you want to keep hammering the ball, but you want to stay aggressive at the same time, and because your defense is playing really well, so you don't want to go into a shell, but you also don't want to take too many risks. And there were a couple 3-and-outs. And yeah, Cincinnati got things rolling again offensively. And part of it was, Joe was under so much pressure. I think they felt like they had to get the running game going a little bit to take some pressure off of him and get some balance going. And yeah, that drive was huge. And I was a little surprised post game. I kind of forgot about it. It was a 9-minute drive, and I'm looking at the final stats, and I'm like, they lost time of possession in this game because that was one of their goals. And I mean, when you have the ball for 9 minutes, that's what happens. But clutch at the end. I mean, a great big stop at the end. Trayvon Diggs, 2 big tackles, and I mean, just really all 3 phases. The punt return by Turpin, the punt by Anger, and then obviously what the offense did late.
I think that play alone kind of answers a lot of questions about Diggs' ability, other than being a ball hawk. Like that answers his questions about him being a good tracker in terms of like in coverage. He was ready for that, and he swooped in that like it was no tomorrow. And T. Higgins, is it T. Higgins? He stopped. Yeah, so just had no chance at all. So that was a beautiful play from Diggs, I have to admit. But so Rob, did you say you had to go and leave off there?
Yeah, I got to run. I got to go finish up a column here. But I really appreciate the time, guys. And anytime you call me on, just hit me up.
Yep, we'll do, man. But guys, be sure to go and check out Talking Cowboys. Be sure to go and follow Rob on Twitter and that. And yeah, thanks again, Rob, and thanks for swinging by. And we'll definitely get you back on again, man.
Okay, cheers.
Thanks,
guys.
Rob.
Safe.
Thanks, Rob. Take care, man.
Thanks, Rob.
Bye.
The one and only Rob Phillips, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so Jamie, do you want to start talking about the defense then?
Yeah, take it away, man.
Right. I won't even bother with the transition because it's been a nice wee flow of conversation we've had tonight so far. So I don't want to put the transition and just kind of like cut it, So
we didn't go with the offensive drop anyway.
Nah, we didn't. So yeah. So where do we start? Who do we want to talk about first? Do we talk about Parsons? Do we talk about Diggs? Do we want to talk about how Donovan Wilson had a really outstanding game. Well, we'll talk about Wilson, but he did cause a couple of dodgy penalties.
Before you jump into the names, can we just throw one more in there?
Yeah.
I'm going to throw in Dorrance Armstrong as well.
Yeah, Dorrance Armstrong came out strong. Like, the defensive tackles did their job. Like, it's not the most stellar performance. They didn't make any tackles, but in terms of when you look at the video and the tape, like, Hill, Gallimore, Bohanna had a great game. Like, when you look at the stats, it's not much, but when you see what Bohanna did in terms of getting into his gap, and it really made Joe Mixon completely back out of committing to that gap, and he had to go elsewhere. And that's what made the plays for likes of LVEs and Donovan Wilson's to make those tackles coming outside of the edge. So the defense.
Will we just quickly run through the stats?
Yeah. Let's bring it up. Sorry. Yeah.
Bearing in mind, this is the AFC Super Bowl contender we're talking about. So you've got Leighton Vander Esch, 4 tackles, 3 assists, a sack, and a tackle for loss. Micah Parsons, 4 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss. Dorrance Armstrong, 2 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss. How good is that? I mean, from Dorrance Armstrong, this is the guy that doesn't play all that much, and he's still put an awful lot on the stat sheet. But go ahead, Paul. Go and bring it up. Oh, I see you brought it up. I mean, wow.
I'm just looking at the list here. I think there's just a wee bit of a mix-up with 1 or 2 stats here, but I think we're good. But I've got the stats here as well, according to ESPN as well. But in terms of total tackles, like you said, Donovan Wilson had 8 total. Van Der Esch had 7 total. Diggs was 6. Anthony Barr was 6. Anthony Barr showed up, which was great. I tell you what, though, is Malik Hooker had a really good game as well. Malik Hooker, like he was quite underneath the radar, I thought. But yeah,
it was impressive how many times they got in the backfield as well. Like, a lot of these tackles, I know some of them come across a bit. Sometimes it's always, when I look at it, it looks sometimes a little bit demoralising. Like, you look at, say, for like Leighton Vander Esch, 9 total tackles. None of them were for loss. But if you actually look at how many times, I mean, like, rather than, I think there were a couple of times when Mixon looked like he was going to bust some big moves, and Van Der Esch stopped him for a 1 or 2 yard gain. I mean, like, those kind of things can just spur you on a little bit. But how many times they got into the backfield? Like I said, that's why I brought up Dorrance Armstrong in that as well, because he was in the backfield flying around somewhat rotten all night.
Yeah.
I mean, just off the top of my head, thinking on where Parsons' success came from, it was Lyle Collins, really, wasn't it? I mean, the amount of times we saw Parsons line up in the wide 9, take 2 steps, and then engage with Collins. The amount of times he would engage, take a step, and then change direction completely on Collins.
Like, he made Collins overcommit to one side of the block, which I thought was really, really impressive. And this is, I said this numerous times, is like the key to win was use speed. Doesn't matter if you were Parsons or D-Law or whoever in that. The key is to use your speed against this offensive line, and they were unable to cope. Even in the interiors, Tardell Volson, the rookie guard, was not coping with the speed from the interiors and from the blitz. You even saw that. But just, I want to bring up a couple of questions before we kind of move on. So, Big Labarski, big shout out to you. Love the name, man. Love the name. He's been here a couple of times, so he's now a regular. Can you all talk about the penalties real quick? Problem or the defense just trying to overcompensate for the hype? I would assume that's more towards the whole Donovan Wilson hit.
Well, that one, and also
two on Burrow, weren't there?
There was 2.
There was 2 on Joe Burrow. Both,
Wilson
I think it was more we were too hot-headed. I can't remember who the other one was. If you can remember who it was, and just put them in the comments, that would be great. But we can't remember it off our top of our heads.
I think the Wilson one was the lighter one. There was one There was a
The-
particularly bad
the
one.
the first one was Anthony Barr.
That's right,
That-
Anthony Barr. That's who it was. Yeah, and might just came in with the comment.
It nullified a punt, didn't it? It would have brought.
Yeah, that one was a little bit sus. That one I have to admit, but the Donovan Wilson flag was justified, I thought. But over and all, you can't really put down a really bad performance. Like on the defense, like when we're talking, when you're talking about that 8-minute drive, Cincinnati were trying to wear us down, and it worked. Like basically, the defense got tired, and that's where the touchdown came from. Really, end of the day. And if that was just like a standard quick 3-and-out or like just a couple of minutes in that drive, you'd be a completely different story. But the Bengals managed to kind of grind that out and work that defense they were just unable to kind of keep up with the pace.
Yeah,
that last touchdown, I had an awful feeling as the clock was ticking out that the Cowboys were going to let them in to kind of try to save some time on the clock. But thankfully, they managed to keep him out for so long. But so at times it felt like a typical Cowboy performance, wasn't it? But it's also good to see that they can grind these results out. Backs against the walls. I mean, we haven't got a starting quarterback. We're still missing a starting receiver as all-pro left tackles out for however long. We sadly lost Cox before the game on defense.
Yeah, I have to admit, Jamie, when I saw that come out, the news about Jabril Cox, I was like, "Oh, you have got to be joking me!" Like I was really hyped up to see Jabril come back, and he was just registered as inactive, and I was just like, "Oh," because if anything, we really needed like Jabril, but it turns out like the linebackers were on point throughout the whole game. Like, I know even just that. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but did you notice that at some point Dan Quinn mixed it up by taking the defensive tackles completely out and replaced them with Parsons and LVE? Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Like,
that was impressive.
That was like, and that the reason why they did that because they wanted to add more speed towards the pressure. It's all about speed. It really did came down to it.
Whatever they did. Sorry, Jay, go on.
No, I just also recall.
There you go, the NASCAR D line. There we go.
There was also a situation where I think Burrow had an empty backfield. He had, I think it was it 5 wide receivers or four wide receivers and a tight end, and the Cowboys were showing blitz with 6 players on the line, and Burrow had no idea what to do with it and called a timeout.
Yeah,
do you guys remember that? There was basically like
you actually see Joe Burrow actually getting frustrated, like there was a screen like camera angle of Joe Burrow after he called the timeout, and he was really frustrated. So you could tell Dan Quinn was on point with his scheme in terms of the play calling. Like he had it on point.
But that was the thing, though. I mean, see, when you rush 6, you've got man for man on the outside, and he had no confidence in that either. Like, it wasn't as if he could go a quick out to chase.
Well, that's the thing.
It was press man as well.
Yeah, they tried that as well. I can't recall what play it was, but basically we stacked it right up. Like there was like a 6-man front, and literally like the only option for him was Jamar Chase. But because of the pressure coming from the side of La'el Collins, because I think Jamar Chase was on the right hand side in terms of the offense, it was just like too much pressure to throw the ball to Chase and to get him to the right position. So it was just well-designed defensive play from Dan Quinn, and credit to Aaron Dudley as well, the defensive lineman coach as well.
I mean, see, when you think, like, we've hyped so much praise on the D-line for the amount of sacks and pressures they got, but let's not forget Jamar Chase, who is arguably a top 5 receiver, 54 yards, 9 targets, and 5 receptions. That's an incredible effort by the defense. I mean, maybe that's why Burrow was holding on to the ball so long. I mean, obviously you don't get the best view on TV, but if he's holding on to the ball, he's not got anywhere to go with it.
Don't forget, like, the statistic that here's the most important statistic. So I don't know if you guys recall, before the game of the interview with Jabbar Chase about him and Trevon Diggs. Yeah, that's now came back to bite him in the butt. So
bring up that comment from Mike.
Yeah, because Mike just might just time that perfectly. Like so, Trevon Diggs versus Chase, 1 catch, only 6 yards.
Wow.
You know, you can add then as well. I can't remember if it was made the week of the game or if it was made at the start of the season about Lyle Collins saying that he don't need to worry, he's not going to be on his back. Well, then that's you come up against someone like Micah Parsons and the front 4, front 7. You could really argue about. I mean, they're going to get.
Guys,
they know about what is.
I'm just about to confirm this. Hold on a second.
What is what Lyle Collins' weaknesses are. So that's one thing that you don't want to kind of put out there just to piss that offense, the defense off a little bit more to show why the Cowboys didn't re-sign him.
Guys, I've got some breaking news. So this is reported by Patrick C. Walker, who's Dallas Cowboys reader for CBS Sports. Dennis Houston has been released.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And Joe's just added the comment in there as well. So I just wanted to double check and verify that. So officially, Dennis Houston is being released by the Dallas Cowboys. What are your guys' thoughts?
Straight away, that makes me think that Gallup's ready to play this week.
It makes you assume that. Yeah. Like, there would have to be a casualty at some point for someone, or whether it's someone in the defense or someone in the offense. But yeah, Gallup must be ready. So, and there we go. Our Brian, who's still living it up in Italy right now. He's saying,
to flip it another way, just for the fact because Schultz did go off with a little bit of a niggle on it. So does it make you think?
Yeah,
a little bit worse.
That's something I would love to have asked Rob before he went off. Is what is the status of Dalton Schultz right now? Because obviously at the end of the game, he kind of limped off a little bit, but he seemed to be okay. Like I don't think there's been any actual reports or anything like that. But I just want to know if there any more inside knowledge to like if it's just a wee niggle, you'll be good for the Giants.
Do you have to be on the active roster to practice?
Good question. I'm not too sure.
Because I think that move might be towards Jamie's point, and that they're looking at an additional tight end because the timing of it is strange. Because if Gallup's ready, why wouldn't you leave it until Friday, Saturday to make sure that he's ready? They've made the decision early. I wonder if they're thinking about tight end.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's a hard one because Ferguson and Hendershot, they did have a pretty good start to their preseason. That we've not really seen much of them during the regular season so far. I don't know if it would be tight end personally, but who knows? Knowing the Cowboys and what the front office has done this year, and if it could be anything, it could be it could be a long snapper. Who knows? Who knows?
Just some news has jumped into my head that we haven't talked about. John Ridgway is now a commander.
Yes, I was just about to bring it up. Yeah, one of my favorite guys during training camp, John Ridgway, aka Big JR, former Arkansas standout, is now who was released by the Dallas Cowboys, is now being picked up by the Washington Commanders. So
you can't keep everybody. Heard it in Hard Knocks often enough. You can't keep everybody, and judging by the performance of that defensive line, we're okay. We're all right.
Yeah, I'm a wee bit bummed out about that one because I had a wee soft spot for him. Because I thought he had a bit of a chip on his shoulder. He had that like the type of attitude that you would expect from a defensive tackle, nose tackle, pretty much. So, but yeah, I would normally say I would wish him the best, but because he went to Washington, I'm not going to say that. I'm just going to I'm just going to say good luck to you for being with that team. That's it.
We'll see him again in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So-
Well, that's the
If he's
thing.
still on the roster.
Here's the thing. Do you think he might actually get some game time against us? That's the thing for him to learn Washington's playbook, etc. Do you think that's enough time?
that Commander's D line is a fair unit. So I don't know.
On the edge it is, but the interiors are not that great. Because they've got Jamar Chase and what's the other guy for Fontaine Sweat?
Sweet, isn't it? Yeah.
So they've got the 2 edge rushers, but anyway, we're kind of a wee bit.
It's not to spend too much time with Commanders.
Screw them. Anyway, no one wants to talk about them or the Shields but we will be talking about the Giants on Thursday for the pre-game. So be sure to go and tune in on Thursday for that, folks. But also, in terms of Micah Parsons, the guy is just elite. We got ourselves a proper superstar in our hands. We really do. Like, even from his rookie season, like the fact he's played multiple positions from linebacker, being on the edge, being dropped into that NASCAR defensive line, like playing more on the nose type of thing. We're seeing him all over the place, and he's actually been put back in deep coverage before, nearly playing like a cornerback at one point last season. But we're now starting to see that again. What can he not do, guys? What can he not do?
I think you just look at the stats they've been chucking about at this stage in his career, and you don't want to kind of put him up against different people in terms of Hall of Famers, etc. Because sometimes it's a bad way to go. But I think how he started his career in the NFL. He's brilliant, but he's got more sacks than Lawrence Taylor, and players of that high caliber, and it just shows that you get someone in the right system.
Just for context, Jamie, are you referring to he's had more sacks than Lawrence Taylor in terms of the number of games he's played since being in the NFL? Right. Okay.
This point in his career, he's got more sacks than Lawrence Taylor and players of that stature. So you think if he's on the rise like that, it's like he's not even halfway through year 2. You think what's to come of this kid in 3 or 4 years, and he's going to really hit his peak.
And here's the thing, though, like you can argue, especially back in the days of LT, and that you could say it was actually maybe somewhat. I don't know. It's hard to say that, but the rules were different back then. We don't know if. Sorry, my dog just appeared and he's crying. Sorry. You could say back then rules were different. You're allowed to chop block at the time, stuff like that, and you could get away with pretty much a lot more back then. And sacks were kind of like more different. I don't know. It's hard to say, but the matter of fact is, like, Parsons was pretty much the architect throughout that whole game. Even though he got 2 sacks, but he was responsible for every single one of those other sacks for LVE, to Donovan Wilson, and for Dorrance Armstrong.
You're onto something there, Paul, because when was the last time you heard 11 flagged?
Never.
You know, when you consider the amount of protection they give quarterbacks nowadays,
exactly,
the amount of protection they give tackles in terms of, like you're saying, chop blocks and so on, hands to the face, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You never hear him. He's for being so productive on defense. He's one of the cleanest defensive players I think we've ever had.
Even his tackling technique, see, like the way he tackled Joe Burrow, it was like he swarmed on him. Like he actually made sure it collapsed onto him. It's not like a hit to the helmet or anything like that. It's like he's not there to try and actually take someone. It's actually there to try and put them down to the ground.
Yeah,
and in a really safe way, but also in a more like bringing that physicality towards that. So Parsons is playing by the rules. He's playing it at such an elite level right now. So I don't know what you think, Jamie. Like, do you think we can expect to see record numbers from Micah Parsons into this season?
I think you could do. I'm probably going to go out a limit. I might get things. I think at this minute, I think he's the best defensive player in the NFL. It's not even close, and that's no disrespect to players like TJ Watt and
TJ will probably won't win it this year because obviously he's trying to be missing games out this year due to the pectoral injury or something like that?
I mean, like on that kind of level. But it's like he's been consistent every game. Even when the Cowboys defense is notoriously played bad, he's always been the shining light.
This is my and I want to get your thoughts on this, Graham, because obviously you've got a lot of knowledge about the defensive line and O-line as much as I do as well, and that's one of your favorite things to talk about. I tend to think like when you don't put Parsons on the line of scrimmage, and this is what I was kind of saying to Rob, I kind of feels like the defensive line are not as effective. They still are effective, especially in the run defense. They're really effective, but in terms of the pass rush, it seems that we need Parsons always to be there now, and kind of goes to my point. It's like, if Parsons is not there to be that architect to kind of make defenses work, then who's going to be that guy to kind of like go over? Like, the guy could be Sam Williams in the future. Like, he shows some a bit of promise because he does have the physical attributes to be a really good player. But I don't know what your thoughts are, Graham. What do you see the defensive line without Parsons being on that line of scrimmage? Do you see it as less effective? Do you think
I completely agree. No, I completely agree. Like, I raised the point with Rob. Like, a couple of times, more than often than not, they line him up next to Lawrence, or they line him up on the outside of whoever the D end is on the other side, and that creates pressure points. And they move the pressure points around so that nobody gets used to Parsons from a particular angle or from a particular position. Like, there was a couple of times where they rushed him up the middle, and it was just as effective because when he's in that linebacker position, he can find the gaps and he can plug the gaps. Either that, or you've got him like in the wide nine. I mean, Lyle Collins had a long day yesterday. I mean, see when you put him out wide, he has those first two steps, engages on a shoulder, and then can switch to the other shoulder, like in the drop of a heartbeat. Like, if you overcommit on Parsons, he'll take that one step and do you inside. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, if you don't respect the speed on the outside, he'll curl round. He'll curl around you so quick. No doubt about it. I felt that the loss of Collins was sore, but he didn't have the greatest night. I've got to be perfectly honest. He got found out against Parsons, and
I agree. Like, and I said this, and I thought that one of the key points to victory, and this was something I was writing for an article for, was Aidan Dudley and Dan Quinn need to expose Lyle Collins because he's obviously had, the hip surgery a couple of years back. That still, like, he was not the same player since after that surgery, and it's clearly on show that he's having difficulty with his mobility. Mm-hmm. Play to your strengths, use your speed to make him feel uncomfortable, get his hips turning in all ways of directions, and we saw that. We saw Lyle Collins actually falling up front on his face, trying to catch up to Micah Parsons and like Darren Armstrong, etc. And but yeah, it's what can we say? Like, it was well played. Like, Dan Quinn, Aidan Dudley, they did a great job. But in terms of the run defense, though, guys,
just before you jump on that, only because I was having a quick gander through Twitter, not to switch it back to the offense.
Yeah, sure.
But our good friend and our guest for tonight, Rob Phillips, has just tweeted saying, and it's only because we never mentioned the name, what the waving of Houston could actually potentially create a spot for Jalen Talbot to come back this week as well.
Not even thought about that actually.
I mean, and that's why I thought I'd just bring it back because he's literally just tweeted.
Okay, right, that makes more sense. Okay, so there you have it. Our guest Rob Phillips, who was here earlier, just tweeted that out. So be sure to go and follow him. And he's
Interesting.
also,
Interesting. You had to go before that news broke.
yeah. That's probably why. Because
that was the breaking news.
The breaking news. I need to leave. So now we know. But,
all users' memos sitting out in the Cowboys there.
Yeah. It's like a wee red flag. It's like, dear, but
drop everything.
But yeah, guys, I also we'll move into the different positions as well, because I know Brian's desperate to talk about Malik Hooker, but I want to talk briefly just on the defensive line in terms of the run game. So the total rushing yards, and I've got the stats right here. We managed to keep the Cincinnati Bengals down to 89 yards total. 57 of those yards was only Joe Mixon. 57 yards. When you break that down, that's fantastic. Considering problems we've had before with certain running backs, like back in the 2020 season, stuff like that. This is a great talent, and Joe Mixon is a fantastic running back. He is a fantasy football fiend when it comes to getting you points and yardage and stuff like that. Not today.
No.
So just to add it up, and before I'll let you speak, but I'm sorry to say Brian there. Sorry, mate. But Joe Mixon had 19 carries with 57 yards, and that is 3 yards per carry. The defensive line did their job in terms of the run game.
They did.
It was the most impressive positional group for me on Sunday night. They were on it. Like I say, it was just, even when the offense stuttered after half time, the defense still played to a high level. And yeah, I said it all along, and they got a crap load of sacks this weekend. That position group's going to be number one in sacks got this season. It's getting stronger every week.
I mean, not to rain on the parade, but I'm going to bring I'm going to bring a little bit of balance to the force. Tony Romo made a great point in commentary that that's a brand new offensive line they're dealing with just now. Four of the five starters have gone from the Super Bowl, so they've obviously made efforts to try and protect Joe Burrow a little bit more.
But they've lost the continuity of that line. When you just when you think about it, so there's Lyle Collins, Alex Kappa, Ted Karras, and the rookie Cordell Volson. So that was the 4 offensive linemen that they brought in. The only one that was from that Super Bowl was Jonah Wilson, the left tackle. So it's a big shift change. Like you would expect to maybe bring 1 or 2, but not 4. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, that was quite interesting. But even still, though, like they were still moving the ball against the Steelers quite effectively, and that was my biggest concern going into this game, was their run game. Like, but it's but yeah, but
it's a good time to catch. I mean, I'm not making excuses for them. Take nothing away from the defensive line, but
you're getting called. The bastard's calling you out, my man. The bastard's calling you out.
See, that's why we need these guys to keep us all in check.
Yeah. But so without further ado, we'll move on to Brian's. He wants us to start talking about the fact that Hooker's holding down the middle ages, that we're not giving up deep plays. I mean, I thought Hooker had a great game. I don't know about you guys.
Do you know what? Just with that comment, thinking back of watching Red Zone.
Wait, hold on. This is the comment, Jamie. I need to bring this one up. So Brian's followed up this comment with this: Hooker locking down the middle like a prime Jeff Heath. There it is.
I think he's had too much of that Italian lager, hasn't
he? No, I mean, so Malik Hooker, former first-round draft pick, played for the Indianapolis Colts, had a little bit of a mixed time over there with injuries and stuff like that. But since he's been to Dallas, and hello, Arnie, this is probably like his first proper full camp. He's not really had any injury concerns or anything like that, and he's been solid. He's been absolutely solid. Like, I just what do you guys think? Do you think Hooker's now like here's the question. Do we think the safety position is now finally fixed after all these years of being neglected?
Right now, I mean, it's certainly above average. When you consider for years we draft the safety, please draft the safety. We need a safety, draft the safety. They've kind of picked up guys who weren't A-list free agents, given them an opportunity, and Hooker and Kearse have taken it because they're relatively young in their Cowboys careers. I mean, Hooker's not all that old anyway, but I mean these guys were on other teams 2 years ago. When you consider how well they've done in Dallas, it's a fantastic return from what we've paid out in terms of salary and so on. I mean, these are not highly paid players. You could argue that Kearse and Hooker were looking for second opportunities. Not to get too carried away, but are we going to be able to keep them?
Well, that's always going to be the discussion, isn't it, Jamie?
Oh, it always is, and it always seems to fall on us. Just to kind of go back to what he says, I probably agree with Graham, and it's probably fixed for what we need now. But do you then want to be in that position, in the position we were at the start of last season, of what's happening at safety, what's happening, I don't know, what maybe cornerback 3, cornerback 4, and you're sitting there and you think, right, do we need to go get some more guys off the streets that can hopefully get in there? I think I think it's papering over a crack at the minute. And it's just weird.
In a way, it still kind of feels like that with the overall team right now. It feels like the whole team of the Dallas Cowboys feels like there's just massive band-aids from different parts of the positions. Like, but it's how long those band-aids are going to last now. Like Malik Hooker, like we don't have him on a longer-term contract, but the way how he's playing right now, we might have to lose out on him. Like, given like was he on like a 2-year deal or something like that?
Well, Hooker's contracted for next year. Is Kearse? Goodness, so is Kearse. So I take that back. They both have deals through at least 2023. So that's encouraging. The
one thing that scares me, and we've all said it numerous times on previous shows, that this team never really seems to have a level of consistency of, I mean, in terms of on both sides of the balls. Now, if you look at, you could argue that the Bucs Super Bowl winning team from the other year, some of the Patriots Super Bowl winning teams, they kind of have that balance of offense and defense, and they always have great play from one. And whereas with the Cowboys, especially over recent years, it always seems to be, if the offense is really good, the defense is below average, and if the defense is really good, the offense is below average. It's never kind of that.
It's never yin and yang. It's never
And that's what it's kind of maybe more so because Dak's gone down, and it's like the defense is going to be that one that kind of probably wins us more games than the offense does until Dak comes back. But then when Dak comes back, we're going to see the defense slide off. So it's kind of, not wanting to get ahead of ourselves a little bit just because it's the Cowboys and it's always this way, and we're always going to be like.
So after a quick look, they're both free agents after 2023.
Right.
So
we're going to have to keep one of them, but at what price? That's the question.
Well, see, this is the thing. The front office need to work out, are they in form or have they turned a corner? Because there's nothing worse than you paying a player on form and then the play drops after they get their big deal. You know, you could go ahead and pay somebody 30 million over 3 years and all of a sudden they're back to back to the levels they were playing at before they joined the team. But that's the big decision.
Does it feel like this secondary for sure definitely needed someone like a Tyron? I feel like for a lot of years it doesn't feel like, and what I mean in terms of the kind of what he brings on the field, but also his leadership as well. And for me, the secondary anyway has lacked that for a lot of years. Like I say, you could argue going back as far as maybe Woodson and them kind of players being back there. The Cowboys have never really had that kind of that player, that leader since those days, since the 90s. And it's
talking of Donovan Wilson. How about that hit in the backfield? That was superb. That was from the safety position. That was fantastic. Was it Joe Mixon?
Yeah, I believe so.
He took down for like an 8-yard tackle for loss.
Oh yeah, just came out of nowhere. But I mean, I want to bring up Labasi's comment and a comment like we haven't even mentioned about the guys that could actually replace like Sir Carson, like Sir Hooker and that's McQuamu and Bell. Like, who knows? These guys might actually start to feature more as the season progresses, because these guys could potentially be the future for the team. So, and it's like what everyone's saying. It's like you're always going to have someone to come in, replace, and out with the old and with the new, if it's cheaper or better value for deal, whatever. And that it's a business end of the day. And speaking about business, and I'm going to slightly jump ship to a different position. LVE. Leighton Vander Esch, right? Since under Dan Quinn, he's performed very, very, like, he's very under the radar, but he is performing like he's at the right place at the right time, making the right blocks. We ended up getting really lucky for him to, like, we didn't give him the extension, but we did give him a new deal where it ended up being cheaper for was it a 1-year contract?
1-year deal and $5 million, I think it was.
Yeah, so we saved ourselves money in the cap that way. But the way how he's playing right now, what's going to happen with LVE when it comes to next season? You know,
I've been a massive critic of LVE, but I were impressed with him at the weekend.
I think we all were, Jimmy. We all were, especially in the 2020 season. We all were. But since under Dan Quinn, he really has found his feet. He's found that understanding of the position, like getting into the right place at the right time. He's assisting the tackles. He knows when to stack up with the tackles. For the assists, he's there. So, and even his cover skills right now is getting better. Yeah. And we all thought, especially with the net brace and stuff like that, the multiple injuries he's had, we would have thought he would have been kind of one of those players that just kind of like dust off into the wind. We wouldn't really hear again. No, he's actually getting better and better. So
he's got the right coach, certainly for the linebacker position. I mean, think of the linebackers at Seattle have produced over the years.
This is my point when it comes to Dan Quinn. It's like he seems to turn like players that, well, I wouldn't say players that no one really wanted, but it seems like players that you wouldn't really think they were going to be standards, but so somehow he manages to get the light bulbs thinking in their minds and actually makes them get the best out of them. That's Dan Quinn when it comes to his defense. Like, he's done it with not just Seattle, but he's done it with us now. So, but what do you think, guys? Do you think the Jones family might have to start rethinking about getting a new extension deal done for LVE?
I don't know about you, Jay, but I think it's a little bit early for me. The way they use Van Der Esch, what you're right in what you're saying. He's not flashy and he doesn't show up on the stat sheet all that much.
Well, Well,
and it's tough.
That's when you're wrong, because he was our second top tackler with seven total tackles, 4 solos, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss, and I think he was the top tackler against the Bucks against last week. So he's right up there. So
I suppose that's how quietly he's going about his game just now.
yeah, that kind of proves the point. Yeah,
we've all commented as well tonight, and this one always seems to kind of like the Cowboys in the proverbial backside, that it's contract year. What's he going to do if you give him that big contract? We've been burned on it so many times, and now if you're talking of someone, I know it's a bit early, but someone playing maybe at the level of Micah Parsons and he's in contract year, and you think, right, you know what, we've had consistency out of him for years, whereas it's been inconsistency from LVE, and it's like, well, do you then go out and, because he's had so far a couple of good games and you keep banking on that happening, do you then take the plunge and go, right, let's give him a 3-year deal on a decent set of money, or do you go, do you know what, let's see how it continues, let's maybe push it into the off season. If we lose him, we lose him. It's just that pull. Is he more important to keep, or can you get out of somebody else what you're getting now, maybe in the back end of the draft of next year?
Yeah.
See, I know it's early, but you're gonna have to think about Parsons' deal soon.
Parsons and Diggs. Brian just made a comment about we need to think about the Trevon Diggs' deal, because I think he's got this year, then next year, and that's it. So we want
right.
So if I was Jerry and Steven, I would try and maybe get him done early, because how many times have we crossed out ourselves not doing the deal early? Like, we actually even overcompensating too much, or we end up losing out on the player.
And then you flip it the other way, you've also then got to think of CeeDee Lamb's going to be coming up as well, around about the same time as well.
I'm not particularly worried about Lambs, if I'm being perfectly honest. I don't know if it's just me.
I just mean it's more so you getting that young core that's coming towards contracts, and like you say, and you've still got all this money you're paying to Zeke. There's all this money you're paying to Dak, so you you've got to then. Eventually, I'm sure Zach Martin will be coming up at some point now. If he keeps playing at that level, he's going to command another big contract. Mm-hmm. It's you've got to just. I think
I might be doing LV a disservice, but for me, I mean, anybody that's watched Hard Knocks this offseason will know of Malcolm Rodriguez. Now, Rodriguez was an undrafted free agent. Rodrigo plays extremely well in preseason and ends up starting for the Lions.
The linebacker from Oklahoma.
Yeah. So
that was a guy I really liked us to draft, to be honest.
So, undrafted free agent, has a great preseason and ends up starting for the Lions in the past 2 weeks. Now, do you need to pay somebody that amount of money, or can you try and find somebody? Because, like we're saying, you've got Lawrence's deal. You're going to have to do Parsons soon. You're going to have to do Diggs before that.
Potentially have to replace one of 2 safeties as well.
You can't pay everybody. I mean, we're talking about 2 games. It's early yet, but that, do you get what I mean? Like, could you find an alternative without having to pay somebody $10 million?
Well, that's the thing with the NFL. There always will be a replacement. Maybe not up to the exact same level that you hope for, but there always will be. Like, bear in mind, like, how many players go into the draft every year? Like 256 players will get selected or something like that. And there's always going to be more players getting cut than being on the, so it's 53 players in the team. Do you imagine all the amount of players that are all across the United States, not just the US, but internationally as well, try and be part of that 53-man squad? There is always going to be someone out there.
think you've got to look at it as well.
It's really down to your scouting network more than anything.
Do you pay 10, 12 million, as Graham was saying, to one who might get you, just throwing a number out there, 7, 8 sacks from the linebacker position, or do you go out and get 3 or 4 players of the same value that might get you 4 apiece? Or would you, like you're saying, you've got to kind of find that balance, don't you?
Yeah, that's definitely more the job for the front office. But
Yeah.
we've kind of dived away from the actual defense and the Bengals there. But let's kind of finish off with a really good high note. Brett Money Maher, like he's crushed it.
He's the enigma. He's the enigma.
Yeah, he was.
There was one comment made in the game as it was ticking down, and it kind of got a thing like, I was so frustrated because they'd scored, and you sit there and you're thinking, we're all talking in the admin group, we're like, we've blown it, and the drive kept on building up, and you're thinking, do you know what? They're going to get, they could potentially get this if they keep playing it right. And then Tony Romo came out with a comment of, run the ball at the middle, save the timeout. And they kind of did the opposite of what it did in terms of they ran it, but just let the clock run. And you're thinking, what are you doing? And then you look at the distance and you're like 50, and you're like, this guy's pinged a 54-yarder in the game already. There's no way he's going to nail a 50-yarder straight down middle. And like literally, I think I watched it.
It was so close to hitting that post though. It was so close. But I don't know about you. I don't know, like, does any of you guys watch the wrestling at all, like the WWE, like, or just
nah.
Right, right. Okay, like I don't normally do watch it, but I find this Brett Maher story kind of resembles the wrestler Drew McIntyre's scenario. Like, so he originally gets into the WWE, he becomes like the kicker, like he was supposed to be the replacement for Dan Bailey type of thing, essentially. Didn't do so well, so he goes to the smaller teams, comes back to the Drew comes back to WWE, becomes the champion, but for like say Maher's situation, he comes back to the Cowboys and ends up winning the game. He's actually going. It's a kind of similar, like, I'm not painting a great picture here if I'm being perfectly honest, but you get the idea. It's like, I think it took Maher to go somewhere else to kind of rediscover himself, then go back in again. And he's been solid. I have to admit.
I never realised, and like you said, you could probably say, couldn't you, he's a journeyman, but did I write somewhere? This is his third stint with the Cowboys, isn't it? Is it the first?
No, this is second. This is the second.
Come up for a second, or his third, yeah.
Brian's saying Drew McIntyre, really. It's just like, okay, like, let me re-explain that again. Right. So this guy got fired. He got fired, went to somewhere else, came back to the team, or came back to the organization even stronger. That's the gist of it. That's the main gist of it, pretty much.
Not to kind of rain on his parade of the thing. But
I do still have my concerns, though. I do still have my concerns. I'm still waiting for the 30 to 40 yard kicking range. That seems to be the. How would you put like, what's those balancing rods? It's got to be liquid measure on it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, what's the corner?
Right, so you've got your 10 to 20, perfectly good. But see, right bang in the middle, there's an empty gap there. That's the 30 and 40 yards.
Do you know what, and like, not to rain on his parade, and just because we all know how many kickers the Cowboys brought in the offseason. Now,
Leveler, thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Just because he was the best of a bad bunch, to put it in a polite term, and that's why he's on the roster, because there was nobody else around. And it was the Cowboys clearly thought the kicking situation was that bad that we brought in 4 kickers in pre-season and had them all beaten.
And
he ended up on the practice squad anyway, so it was kind of like the Cowboys were probably not happy with the kicking position, because if you're happy,
I agree.
He's on the practice squad there.
It has been a complete whirlwind of an off season in pre-season when it comes to the whole kicker situation, because we got that was it Garibay,
Yeah.
and then we had Hallelujah, whatever, how would you pronounce his name?
Hulu.
Aye, that like I just can't be bothered to pronounce his name correctly. I just call him Hallelujah, and but yeah, and it just was not working out. Like we watched some of this live during training camp, and even like some Mickey Spagnola was just like, this is not good enough. This is really, really bad. This is something that needs to be addressed. And
I think what were some of the stats in the thing? I was listening to one on the way to work one morning in just as pre-season were finishing. To fair, and it might actually be Nate Newton that come out of it. Like when it's your point afters, you pretty much you don't want your kicker less than 95%. You allow for block calls. Sometimes the defense gets through and blocks them, but anywhere 42 and under, they need to be on point every time. And you're missing kicks under 42 yards, and you're like nah.
Yeah, I mean, for Lisa Maher, so I think the stats, and I can't, like, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe his winning percentage.
Music by Ron isn't included with Prime, but is available with Amazon Music.
Right, hold on, 2 seconds.
Play over.
We had a special guest on tonight, Paul.
Yeah, my Amazon Prime Echo just decided to start talking to me all of a sudden, so apologies.
Other speakers are available.
Oh my goodness! What was I talking about there?
We were talking how mental the kicker position is. I mean, look at the Colts. They cut Rodrigo Blankenship. Or Blankenship, or
Goggles. They cut Goggles.
Guy has one bad week. Cut. It's a brutal position. Teams
literally
fans love you when you make the kick, and they hate you when you don't.
Yeah. It's really is becoming into that scenario. It's like there is just no room for error at all now. Like if you make one mistake, you're gone pretty much.
And I think it's also the situation for kickers as well, because you literally think you had one job to do, and you didn't do it, but Maher did it and won the game. But if he misses that kick, and we're going to lose the game, the torches and the pitchforks are out, and all of a sudden he gets cut, and we're looking at somebody else, and that's why I think it's crazy when, you'll know yourself, you see kickers signing $4, $5, $6 million deals, and you're thinking, are you going to see the vast majority of that money? I'm not sure a lot of them are.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, apart from one, there's only one that you would probably be happy giving that contract to. And that's Justin Tucker.
Yeah, Justin Tucker's probably the big exception. To be fair,
and again, it could be Nate Newton on a show in the off season, or it might have even been Mickey Spagnola. It surprises me that in the league that there is only one. Oh, I don't know if that's changed now. And Mike touched on it, I think, after we heard it on one of the Cowboys.com shows. There's only one team in the NFL that's got a specialist kicking coach, and they happen to have the best kicker statistically of all time at the minute.
I think that's something that's definitely needs to be considered going forward, because like, you're basically leaving kickers to their own accord. There's no one there to kind of maybe help them with one or two things they might see that might be throwing off their kicks or anything like that. So I think having kicking coaches is definitely something that mean like for all of the NFL might be something to look at going forward. But on that note, I think we should wrap it up, folks. What do you think? I mean, that's
I think it's, to sum it up, I think it was a great win.
It was.
Things to work on. I will say.
Yes.
Things to work on.
I think the end of the story is we're seeing the massive improvements from both the O-line and both the defensive line, but we're still questionable when it comes to the actual overall offense in terms of the play calling. Just being too fancy sometimes, and maybe possibly just taking that step back, being too conservative at some point, possibly. Other than that, we've got a lot more to do going forward, but it's in the step in the right direction compared to week 1. It's definitely in the right direction. So, but yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what we're going to do when it comes to the pre-game show when we're discussing about the New York Giants.
Just the 2-0 New York Giants.
Yeah.
Wow.
Daniel Jones is 2-0 right now. I just can't even compute. I can't even process it. My God.
I mean, there are 6 unbeaten teams in the NFL. 2 of them play in the NFC East.
Yeah. Yeah, I watched some of that game last night. Like,
Trust Grant to really lower the tone right at the end.
Yeah, way to go. On that note, guys, so as you know, Rob Phillips was our special guest today. You can see him. He's on the Talking Cowboys right there in the top left corner. You can also go and check out all these other amazing content creators and other Cowboys shows. You can also check out Blogging the Boys, where you can catch me and Meg Murray on. Big Game James is there. Law Nation is there. J-Tuck's there. Our good friends from Bluff City Cowboys and Cowboys Show, they've got their show together for the Cowboys Zone. Be sure to go and check all these guys out. They make an amazing content. And also go and check out Cowboys Experience, who help sponsor our show for the ultimate meet and greet, stadium tours, game tickets, and tailgate experience. You will not be disappointed. Be sure to go and use the discount code UK Cowboys, guys. And guys, what happens if you use the discount code? Come on.
Go on, G.
You get free stuff.
There we go. And with that package, we do have our own package, courtesy of Cowboys Experience for next year. For the UK Cowboys fans, where it's a travel package which includes game tickets, tours, meet and greets, and so much more. Be sure to go to our Facebook group for more details, or also contact Cowboys Experience for more information. But yeah, guys, we'll end it on that note. And be sure to go check us out on Thursday, as I will be hosting on Thursday. We do have a special guest lined up as we'll talk about the pre-game show against the New York Giants. That should be a fun one to discuss about. Talking about Danny Dimes. But anyway, guys,
everybody gets the alarm clock set because it's a 1:30 in the morning kickoff as well.
Yeah. So again, it's not a nice time for being a UK fan, or if you're in Europe like Joe from Italy is. He will be even more further hours behind to watch the game. So it's not going to be nice in our sleeping patterns for that game. But on that note, guys, send us off.
Stay safe. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good rest of the week. Fingers crossed we get another win.
Winning record on Sunday. Here we go.
Sweet. All right, guys. Have a good one. And we'll see you guys on Thursday.